Hi, this is Marnie Pearson with IdeaMarketers Marketing Makeover Show. Our guest in this episode is Phillip Davis of TungstenBranding.com. Phil has been briefed on Martina's message and given an overview of her books and courses. Now you're going to be able to watch him work his magic to assist Martina in building a brand around her message and an entire marketing lexicon for her to use in her marketing and sales material.
I guess what we want to do is kind of lay the groundwork, Martina, for establishing a platform for you. So in branding is about owning a position in the mind of the consumer, owning something in their mind so that your name or your product or your brand stands for something. It means something significant to them. So kind of as a background, when you think of Rolex, they don't really own the position or the category of watches. They own the position or category of prestige. So the reason most people would buy a Rolex is because it brings a greater sense of self-esteem to them, and they feel like there's something significant to owning that. Because I've been told by people who own them that it doesn't keep the most accurate time. So people, ironic, isn't it? So people would buy a Rolex for that. People buy a Bulldog because it's synonymous with safety. If it's done well. These are what we call best practices in branding. These are things that, if done well, they resonate with people, and you own a position. Most entrepreneurs start off with an idea, and they get so involved in the idea they can't see the forest for the trees, and they don't know what that thing is that they're standing for. Or they create an identity that's so narrow and so specific, it's a little tiny bucket, they put a little seedling in it, and it does take off. So your idea is magnificent, it takes off, and then it becomes root bound in about 6 months. It's too nichey. So in taking this energy that you have and this idea and creating a platform out of it, you want to create some structure so that people can understand it, and you want to create some identity around it, but you don't want it to be too small, and you don't want it to be so nebulous and huge that nobody gets it either. I know it's a lot to take in, but so what you're trying to do is start off and create an identity. So let me give you, would it help if I gave some examples?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
So let's just say that you came out, and Marnie, you'll probably laugh on this because you can be in publishing, you'll identify with this. So I've created a book, and it's really, really a great book. People are going to get a lot out of it, and I call it Inspirational Stories That Will Lift Your Heart and free your spirit. How well do you think that would sell in the market?
Well, there's a lot of them like that.
You're exactly right. It sounds like a lot of other things, doesn't it? Those could be the most powerful stories on the planet Earth, and it's not that they're bad stories, and they're not, the person behind it could be as good as gold or as well-intentioned as anything in the world, but it would just be kind of lost. Now, what if I told you that same set of stories somebody sat down with and created a metaphor and said, you know what these stories are like? These stories are so inspirational. They're so powerful. They're so nurturing and nourishing to your soul. I'm going to say they're like chicken soup.
Yeah.
See, you smiled because you see where this is going. So if someone says, it's almost like it's chicken soup for your soul. And then it creates one of those Marnie light bulb moments, one of those idea marketer, where people go, oh, I get it. These stories are nurturing. The metaphor creates that connection. And so then, as the brand builds, I've seen them now for, chicken soup for the left-handed twin brother. I mean, it's almost that ridiculous now.
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
There's a lot of them. Pet lovers, all kinds of things. And so they created that structure. They created an identity, but it was one that could also expand. I mean, chicken soup as a metaphor could be chicken soup for college students, chicken soup for entrepreneurs, real estate agents. So it was an idea that was also scalable, and Marnie will attest to this. That's something very important to look for. Is your idea not only good, does it resonate, but is it scalable? Or is it something that you're going to have to manage? And if you want to be twice as successful, you have to work twice as hard and twice as many hours. That's not a formula. That's just a really bad job. What I hear is you certainly have the workings of something that's substantive and very big and very deep, where you can break people in on a very deep level. The challenge in branding, and that's what I do. I've been told I have a keen sense of the obvious. It's kind of a backhanded compliment. But what I try to do is, I guess you don't want to necessarily say dumb it down. You want to simplify it so that the person who first encounters you isn't overwhelmed with all that information. You've got to give them a hook. And not in a facetious way, not that it's disingenuous. A hook is simply something to grasp onto. So think of it in a good way. Without a hook, you'd just be straight. I mean, you couldn't grab on anything. You give them something to hook onto, and they buy into it. Then chicken soup is a hook, as opposed to wonderfully inspirational stories. You get, I get that. It's like chicken soup. So the challenge in branding is this. First of all, is to drill down, find out what it is that motivates you, and find that what we call a common thread or a pivot point to everything you do. And that sounds like light to me. But it needs to be more than that, because the light, as you've just explained, works in so many different levels. We just named a nonprofit organization that helps students with their SAT scores out in California, preps them at college prep, and they call it College Spring. collegespring.org. It sounds like, wow, we really got it. It's college and it's spring. But the work wasn't done, because when they picked the name, we were thinking of the spring like a fountain, and they were thinking of a spring like an action, like it catapults you forward. So here we are branding people, and we go, I see why they picked that name. We suggested these names. We wrote the rationales, and they really liked them. And then we started doing the logos, and we're giving them fountains and streams and flowing water. And they're like, why are you doing this? There's no spring in any of this. And I'm like, we're not drawing the water right. Let's shoot the water out. So, words like spring or light can be so interpreted on a lot of different levels. You want to make sure that you're presenting it in the way that you mean it. And then create something that helps connect people with how you mean light. Do you mean light like a supernova? Do you mean light like the beginning of dawn? Like it's breaking and slowly? Is it radiant, which is almost glowing? Or is it bursting? And then what are metaphors for that? I'm just throwing out things that come to mind. When you say light and you said prism, that's a whole thing that you could go down a path. Like, from the prism into the light. It almost sounds like from the prison, And you go in, you hit this hard obstacle, and, out of this obstacle comes 7 opportunities to change your life. And, so there could be something about a prism. There could be something about, the whole color spectrum or the rainbow, or, there's a lot of different ways you could do this. So if you can think in terms of metaphor and you find that little nugget in there, then you can build your story. Our company would call it tungsten, because one day I was thinking about, how we create things and how we think about things and how the light bulb goes on. And I was talking to my creative director at the ad agency where I worked, and I said, boy, I wish our whole identity was based on something different. We were Octane at the time. And this is how powerful brands are. Octane, because we had automotive dealers, and it was high performance, and it was how you could be driven and how you could succeed. So the more we talked about, like performance and being high driven and all that, what I started attracting was, very driven personalities that wanted us to perform at our highest capability all the time. It was exhausting. And I started realizing that I needed to position us different, and I wanted to create a whole different kind of vibe. And so we looked at tungsten as a metaphor for light, in that when you run energy through a wire, it produces light. So tungsten became wired for brilliance. So our job is we take your energy, we run it through our system, and it energizes us, and we're able to cast the light and shine on your idea and this kind of thing. It's similar somewhat to what Marnie does. So if you could find your light reference, what is the best metaphor? And metaphors are great. I think it's specifically in your case. I think that's the real piece of your puzzle that you really need to put together. Does that make sense? Yeah.
I think the term, I think you used when you were saying gradients, kind of the glowing, that's kind of like what I kind of picture almost, as we gain light, like light upon light, we're going to get more and more light until we're like glowing almost, that's kind of
Is this something that you've settled on, like the light plan? Is that kind of what you want to be, your brand? It's just the light plan?
Well, that's the name of the program. But the kind of the hook that Marnie and we've kind of been going through is so the name of my first book is Who You Are Is Not What You've Done.
Right.
So we wanted to kind of get people in on that, because that's a very an easier way, kind of like you talked about, kind of this is too deep and too much right away. So it's kind of like I want to bring people in with the who you are stuff and then take them into the deeper stuff of light and the light plan and being a beacon of light, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So I don't know. Okay. What's that?
We got a little work to do here because you've got the guts here. You have it. It's just a matter of creating a way for people to internalize it. So we've got this wonderful lady here in town, Marla Silly, that's known as the Fly Lady. Have you ever heard of her?
Uh-huh.
The Fly Lady? You have.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
She lives about a mile away. All us people in the mountains, Marty. Yeah, she's like a
one
neighbor.
time I read advice to keep put your tennis shoes on first thing in the morning to get your things done.
Yes.
And I did that for a long time from her advice.
Yeah, and she does this 23 boogie or something and pick up all these different things. And it began very organically. She was blogging, very much like your story. She came from a place of pain. Her house was just covered up. She was depressed, didn't know what to do. She never had anybody over because her house was a mess. And one day, she just started cleaning up her sink, and she got control of her sink. And from there, she realized if she could get control of her sink, she could probably do her counter. And if she could do her counter, she could do this. And she began to share it online in a forum that she was at. People said, well, give us your plan. Give us your life plan. So she started looking for a way to identify with this plan. Now, what if she had called that 20 steps to better organizational and household success? See what I'm saying? She would have still had the same fantastic ideas, and it probably would have had trouble going anywhere. Well, she was a fly fisher woman, not a fly fisherman. She was a fly fisher woman person, and so she said that she was the Fly Lady. And now this is kind of reverse branding. She reverse engineered this. She said, well, I am kind of known as for this hobby, I fly fish, if I'm telling the story right. And so she said, maybe I could make fly stand for something. So she made it into an acronym, Finally Loving Yourself. And as she began to explore that, the people that started coming after her, she started calling them fly babies. And so she created this whole kind of nomenclature or language that really resonated with people. And so the fly babies go to the Fly Lady, and then the Fly Lady gives them advice and how you can finally fly, like you can get your wings and fly, and you fly by loving yourself. So it's creating that whole pathway for people to where it makes sense and it's easier for them to get a handle on what you're doing. So I've written an article. If you go to tungstenbranding.com, one of my blog posts is getting a handle for your business, and I compare it to a suitcase. What you've got a suitcase that's packed full of great things. What you're trying to do is put that little inexpensive little handle on it. And without that handle, people go, oh, that's cheap marketing, or that's just marketing hype or whatever. Fine, you don't need a handle on your suitcase. Then just go to the airport or travel overseas without your handles. See how that works for you. You're going to be explaining it by holding it like this. It's exhausting. You get into that and you see you're nodding your head because you probably tried to explain it to people. Because without a handle, you have to tell them everything that's in your suitcase. Every time you have a conversation, you can't say, here, hold this for a minute, get a grasp on this, and when you get home with it and open it up, you're going to find it has even more in it than you imagined. So how can you create this? So I hear you've got a book, and then I hear you've got the light plan. So how can you marry those so that they're a little more interconnected in terms of how they're branded, how they're named. So when you go and you read the book, you go, wow, based on that book, it makes perfect sense to buy into this plan. So I love the title of your book. It's just a matter of you got to make that connection, or it's such a leap. They're just going to sound like they're just two disconnected products. Okay? Who you are is not what you've done. Is there a way, and I'm not saying this is necessarily the right solution, but is there a way to incorporate light into that?
Marnie, what about, okay, because I have a little parable of the cave kind of thing. You've read that, Marnie. And it's kind of based on, you'd read Plato and you'd go, how the heck did you get that, Martina? But that's kind of where I read that, and I got this whole story from it, just about, these children that are in a dark cave, and, anyway, summarize it, but these tribe elders had them in the cave because, in the past there was a big illness and big disease that wiped out all the adults except for a few of these elder people. So to protect the children, they brought them into this dark cave. And to entertain the children and keep them there, they would have a fire in the background and cast these shadows on the wall of real life things like trees and animals, just kind of like they're watching this movie. And some of the children started to get restless, and then they overheard some people talking about how in the ancient days they used to live up on top of, out of ground, and that these were things that were from the outside. So these children wanted to escape this cave, and so they just kind of went through this little, kind of the journey of getting out of the cave. And some of the children were very mad and wanted to seek revenge on the elders that had kept them held hostage.
Oh, wow,
so they went further into the cave, further darker, Then some of the kids got too scared. Some didn't even want to go there, like to try to escape. It was too scary. So they stayed. They wanted to stay in the cave. Then they started getting out of the cave. Some of them, it was too hard. They had to climb up this little wall. So some it was too hard, and they went back in. And then a few of them got to the top and like escaped out of the cave.
Right.
And one just went running out into the brightness, and yay, I love it. And, one of them, it was all kind of like bright at first. It was kind of hard, and they had to get used to living there. A couple of them, it was too painful for their eyes, and they're like, too much. I got to go back. So they went back into the cave. And then there was one who who felt like, oh my gosh, this is so beautiful. I need to go tell the others. And so there was one that went back into the cave to help tell the others about the light, to show them, to bring them out into the, to the outdoors. So there's that one. And then there's also a fiction story that I've got in the works that kind of illustrate the same thing. So maybe that's the branding that we would go with a little bit more, is kind of the physical dark to light.
Well, and I think that would resonate with people. So who you are is not what you've done. So let's brainstorm this a little bit. Maybe who you are is not what you've done becomes the subtext of the book. You follow me?
Yeah,
so
I thought that too.
Then it becomes out of the cave into the light. Who you are is not what you've done.
You're getting there.
You follow me?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And then, so it's, Marnie, it's like structuring a headline with a subtext. And this is where we get kind of confused. And the subtext is kind of the punch. That's what we're really saying. So you create a metaphor, and then the more literal descriptor phrase kind of tells you what it's about. So out of the cave and into the light, who you are is not what you've done. Right away I go, what I've done is the things in the cave, the things I'm not proud of, the things that made me feel ashamed and made me want to continue to hide out. Then you can talk about what it means to hide out, what it means to withdraw, what it means to try to create a false sense of security by creating these protective walls around you that really just encapsulate you and keep you from growing. And that when you're not in the light, you begin to shrink back. Your world becomes smaller as you move toward. Are you moving towards the rear of the cave or towards the entrance? You talked about taking steps. Are there steps that you can take towards? And maybe you still feel like you're in the dark. But if you follow this path, you're going to find, you begin to see that first ray of light because you're moving that direction. So maybe from where you are now, you could take 10 steps and it doesn't feel like you've made any changes, but you're moving out of the darkness, So maybe that becomes kind of a metaphor. Pardon?
I love the metaphor on it. I think that's perfect.
That was one of the book titles I actually thought of as Out of Darkness.
but the cave is so much better. The cave,
well,
like the cave.
it gives you that visceral feeling, like, Martina, come on, where were you at that point in your life? I mean, you weren't feeling blue,
I was in a dark cave, you're right. You're trapped. All of that. You're trapped, you're hiding out, you're, all of that. You're shrinking back into the dark. I mean, that's just totally in a cave. And Marnie and I, when I sent the parable of the cave to Marnie, she said, you need to put this at the beginning of your book. And I went, how does that tie in? But that would be perfect. I could do the parable and then illustrate the journey out in a real life.
Right. And then the light plan becomes how you get out of the cave.
Yes.
So, so if you've identified with this and you are living, are you a cave dweller? Because, if cave dwellers stayed there for thousands of years, that's the life they lived. It's multi-generational.
Yeah.
And if you choose to live that and pass it on, you will teach your children to also dwell in the cave. Is that what you want to live? Follow me?
Yeah.
So, I believe metaphors are God's gift to us to explain things. A picture is worth 1,000 words. So you are replacing a 1,000-word explanation. Your suitcase is now going into a handle, which is your metaphor. And that's your hook. And that becomes the jacket to your book, and and then it becomes your story. And then you can have fun with it. You could say, here's our speaker today, Martina. She'll tell you herself she used to be a cave dweller, or she used to, or she was a cave woman for, so many years, or, so there could be all kinds of ways to then enrich that metaphor, and you'll think this is where your mind will take over and fit the pieces where it belongs. This is just one iteration. I'm just giving you one example. We said we're going to try out different outfits. Does that fit your brand? Does it make sense? Is there a story? Does it give you a platform? Does it allow you to kind of address different pieces?
I think we nailed it on this one, honestly. I have pictures that I've gone through the photo websites that you can choose ones that would fit your book covers and fit different things. And this just fits right with kind of what I've been trying to work on. I just didn't know how to link them all together. So I think that Out of the Cave is a great, being a cave dweller. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, there's all kinds of little
everybody
things.
knows what.
Oh, I was just going to say there's all kinds of fun little things. Like the cave woman has a club. Okay, so
that's right.
What's the club? Okay, there's probably a bear hibernating in the back of the cave. How does that fit in? You got all these, the fire that you're they're cooking their meat over the open fire. Or they're, I don't know, there's just different things you could play with and make them symbolize things.
Well, and there's a picture I found too where it was the entrance out of the cave is just a hole that they had covered up the whole entrance except for just one tiny hole because that had to let the smoke from the fire out, right? So it's like, so the people or the children that are escaping, first they saw the light from the fire and then they could see light from a distance, but it's clear high up. So they had to climb further and further close to the light and then, then they can get out. So, do you see the entrance, the cave entrance, but you just don't know how to climb up to it?
Right. The other thing too is so there could be a test that you give them. Like, are you in the cave or in the light? So, here's the cave. Does it feel cold? Is it colder or warmer? Another light one. Is it contracted or is it, expansive?
Damp or dry?
Does it make, is it damp? Right?
Musty?
Mm-hmm. Does it feel musty? Does it feel old? Does it feel like a place you've been before? Or does it feel new and fresh and light? So give it the cave test, is there a test that you can literally do? And maybe cave stands for something. I can't, ever, anything, Maybe there's something with that cave mentality, are you suffering from that cave mentality? And that, and so how Marla kind of did her thing, or, the Chicken Soup did their thing. You could start creating your own marketing lexicon, your own marketing language, and it's really a love letter to your listener to help them wrap their head around what you're saying and assimilate your ideas a lot more easily than trying to read thousands of words.
I love it.
So does the cave go into her logo, or, how far do you take the cave thing?
Well, yeah, okay, so here's what I see. Let's see, can you see my Matrix poster back here? There's my Matrix poster. I'm inspired. I was inspired by different things too. So, what I see is kind of a metaphor for that, and for the artwork. Imagine you've got this image of a silhouette of a woman, and she's in front of an opening, a dark opening. So she's emerged from the cave. You follow me? So there's this kind of dark, foreboding opening. And then out of it, it's that first moment when you've come out, shoulders slightly back and arched, hands receptive to life now, arms out. You're receiving the light. You're allowing the light to hit your body. The head is tilted slightly back, and you're embracing life now. So it might not be, and you don't make this real literal, but maybe there's just this kind of this slight darkness with somebody emerging from it with their hands out. And it's just about embracing the newfound light that's always been there, ironically. It was never missing. It was never gone. It's just that you were hidden and unaware of it. Which is probably congruent with your message.
Yeah.
Nobody was hiding light from you.
No, I just didn't go to it yet.
Right.
I love it. I'm drawing pictures.
Yeah.
To remind
and making sounds.
I'm making sounds. I draw pictures and make sounds.
That's that cave lady. She that's why you have those sounds, because you were a cave crawler for years. Yeah, right. That's how you communicated. Painful sounds. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, so then, so as you grow and evolve in your walk towards the light, you learn to communicate, and maybe early on you were, constricted in a lot of the things you didn't know how to vocalize them. So, so you're moving to a more, so there's a number of ways that you could, explain the message.
Okay, so when she came to my Light the World event, and at that we kind of got people down to the like a single metaphor for who they were and what they did and everything, and so Martina's is sort of she's this warrioress of light. She's like leading people out of the light. She's like got the, I just picture her in the whole full gear of the warrioress, the Joan of Arc sort of thing, leading people out.
Yes.
So that could be melded even with the cave thing, right? She comes out of the cave and now she's just sort of this. Could it be? Can you meld those two together somehow?
Yes, I could see, a triumphant leading out of the cave, And so you talk about, here you are, you've discovered it, you're leading other people out. Now you're that person that's gone back in the cave, Martina, I hear. And trying to bring people out and tell them that there's a path that they can follow. You've done it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's definitely, Marty's talking about, that was like my core, because there's a fire in it. I've got this sense of humor that's, kind of light, funny personality, but there's this other side that's very, and there's this fire in me that's very intense. And so when she saw me, it was this very rah,
right. You're charging out of that cave.
I am. I'm charging, and I'm gonna, battle everything I can to get it out of my way. So.
Yeah. So here's some things I hear. You can put your glove down now.
And pick up my sword.
Yeah. So maybe you had primitive thinking early on.
Yeah.
Because you're in a place of pain, so you have very primitive thoughts. You're very defensive, contracted, Your vision wasn't as clear as it could have been. Not because your vision was never clear, but because it was dim. You weren't allowing the light in. That you were built to receive light. Your whole body was built for light. And that your skin, your eyes, everything deteriorate when you're in the darkness. And that if you stay in the darkness long enough, you eventually become blind. Animals that stay in caves generationally become blind. Not because, again, that the sun was never available, but because, that was the conditions that they remained in.
Yeah, like those little geckos that don't even have any eyes anymore, those little chameleons, they're just white.
So there's no brand that's perfect. It's just there's ones that fit better than others. So every metaphor breaks down at a certain point because there's nothing that you can say that can completely describe you. You're indescribable. What's going to give you the most platform and the most bang for your buck? Is it going to be telling a story about a rainbow? Is it going to be telling a story about a light bulb? Is it going to be talking about coming out of a cave of darkness and into light? Which one is the best reflection of who you are and gives you the most legs, gives you the most avenues to tell your story in a strong, powerful way that communicates with ease and simplicity?
So everything that she does, if she chooses the cave metaphor, everything should use cave metaphors in everything you do, in your languaging of your sales pages, your articles, everything, right? So in your language, this is where we talk about marketing lexicon. I would use phrases like, Martina, is there certain things that you tell people in any of your work anywhere and that you've written or anything that's like, don't do this? Is there anything in your body of language that says, and don't do this, that you're currently working on, Marnie? Is there anything?
Are you saying, like, I could say, like, don't pick up the club, and this means this, or is that kind of where you're going? Like,
So you could say, like, you've already got it written. So it's not changing your message. It's just giving it a theme. So right now you say, like, let's say don't return to bad habits, and here's 6 ways not to return to a bad habit. Well, that's just kind of like
blah, blah. It's really ordinary. It's not.
Right. So now what you could say is, so maybe there's this principle, you have this principle, and this principle, this triggering moment so you don't return to bad habits is don't cave in. So, and this is a sign that you're caving in. And so, there's these checkpoints. Are you moving forward? Are you on your light plan? Are you moving forward on your light plan, or are you caving in? And here's what it means to cave in. It means to return to old thinking. It means to not check yourself. It means to, I'm saying these things because you've already got this written. This is not changing your message. It's not trying to contort your message or make it conform to marketing. It's the marketing allows you a language to express what you already have.
I'm going to go with the cave. I can tell you right now, just because I can feel it. And it's like I couldn't figure out how to link all my little things I have. I'm like, what? I had so much, but this just kind of like went bloop, and it's this string that just tied it all together. Right. The parable of the cave, I just wrote like one morning from like 6 o'clock in the morning. So the idea came and it was done by like 6:20. It was this tiny little parable, but it just came really fast. And now I can kind of see why. It's because it just is that little piece that I needed for all the others. So
I frequently hear people say, I've already thought of this, or this came to me, and it usually comes in a very intense download. Like you'll get, I had this idea and it hit me really hard one time and it came to me quickly. Those are the moments of real clarity, so that the fact that that's come to you before and it was really clear and it came to you quickly means there's energy there. There's a lot of energy around that.
Yeah, totally. Okay.
Well, when I read it, I'm like, this has got to be up at the front. This is going to grab people. Let's stick this at the front, so, yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't quite know how it all fit, but now I know. So then, so I'll have my little website and I'll need some kind of logo like that I would put on, okay, like the Fly Lady was known as the Fly Lady.
Right.
Like, do I need to be known as something like, I don't know. I don't want to be a cave woman because that's not what I am anymore, but.
Well, maybe you're a light bearer because as you come out of the cave, you carry that torch or that light, that self-truth that you have, and you hold on to that until you can come to the light of day. So, there could be something in that. And again, this is a work in progress. There's moments, aha moments, but there might be some reworking, and then you find it. I think like Marla, for example, there's a little piece of her work where she did, and she said chaos stands for can't have anyone over or something syndrome. And, that's not exactly fly, but it kind of tied in. And so there could be something that you tweak or that you say, or, I realize that, on this, you don't have to have a complete answer to every single part of it. Start with what feels right and build on it. Okay. Like I said, the light bulb is illegal now. You can't sell tungsten light bulbs. I've been banned. But I'm going to continue for now with this metaphor because I still think it holds a historical meaning of the original thing that brought light to this world in a very mechanical, manly way.
Yeah.
Force light.
Yeah.
So,
yes, it does.
Yeah. So, if that's resonating with you, I would follow on that. But whether you go with this ultimately or not, that's the approach that you take. You look for what is that common thread? What is that unifying principle? What is that thing around which everything you touch revolves? What is your pivot point? And you see that it's light. Well, what is the way that I mean light? What is a metaphor for light? Mm-hmm. So I hear, from a cave to bright daylight is a significant change.
Yeah.
I keep picturing like some woman coming out of the cave with a torch.
Yes.
One of those
yes.
where they material that they put around a stick, and it's that kind of thing.
I think you could keep all your material. I think that the title of your book still stays, but it's just the subtext of it.
Yeah, I think so too.
Because where you've been is in the cave. Who you are is not. What was it? It's not what you've done.
It's where you've been.
And you've been in the cave. Who you are, you're not a cave dweller. You're only a cave dweller because you chose to be there. But that's not who you are. As soon as you leave the cave, you're no longer a cave dweller. So your identity isn't about the cave. You only feel like it is because you put yourself, or allowed you to, or through ignorance, didn't know that you were in that position. But that's not who you are. Mm-hmm. Dwelling and being contracted in that cave and living in a dark place and trying to survive and living in fear is not who you are. It's just where you were at the time.